Welcome to the Knowledge Gumbo Podcast, where we mix together timeless wisdom and thought-provoking stories using quotes, sayings, proverbs, and book passages primarily by Black women. I am your host, Alicia Thomas, and also a fellow seeker of knowledge. The ingredients are ready. Let's get cooking on this week's quote. We desire to bequeath two things to our children. The first one is roots. The other one is wings. This is an African proverb. The concept of roots and wings symbolizes the balance between cultural heritage and personal freedom, which is a prevalent theme in many African narratives, as is depicted by this particular quote. We need to understand the importance of roots. When we look at it from according to a Forbes study, American students, merely or particularly in middle school, show declining knowledge in history, geography, and civics. And this lack of knowledge is attributed to the school's focus now on standardized reading, standardized tests. And these tests do not incorporate culture or historical content. When we look at history, it is a factual evidence of how one action can impact on the next, because we're looking at it as a whole when we're looking backwards, as opposed to people who were in the midst of it can only see their little slice of the pie at the time. And we also know that history tends to repeat itself, especially when we don't learn the lesson the first time. And one thing for our children, I think that is really relevant, but also for ourselves, is we have to learn too that your family is more than the people that you were born into, that family relationship is more than just your mom, your dad, any siblings, even your grandparents and your aunts and uncles. You're culturally a part of a much larger family. And that cultural knowledge enhances a child's creativity, their social interactions, their moral reasoning, but also their spiritual development, because they're learning about their culture in all aspects. It gives them an opportunity to choose. And when we empower them to choose, that rolls right into looking at what giving children wings means, because it's encouraging our children to be independent. It is encouraging adults to be independent, because you cannot work with someone else if you're not a complete whole person yourself. Like the saying of marriage is 50-50. No, marriage is 100-100, because you need a whole person here and a whole person there to come together like synergy to make something greater than the individual parts. But that can't happen if one person is dragging down the other person. So we have to encourage independence, not only in our children, but also in adults who weren't taught these things. As we see, looking at from American standpoint, school system, it's not being taught. And looking at where we are now, the little that is in there is trying to be stripped out. But part of having wings, having independence, is teaching children how to think critically and how to reason critically, to not just tell people or tell kids, do it because I said so, to take it a step further, have them analyze their behavior and reason out what's good, what's bad. Because part of having independent people, independent and critical thinking, as a parent, or even if you're not a parent, as someone who has a critical role in the life of a child, you have to train them so that you can call out the woman or the man in that child at the appropriate age. And if you're not feeding them the right things, they never get to that point to where they can be a whole woman or a whole man, fully understanding where they come from, understanding the historical context of culture, of how we came to be. And we as adults have to take on that role, whether you have biological, children or not. You have to take on the role of I'm going to feed knowledge. I'm going to share knowledge with whoever I come in contact with, even if it is another adult, because sometimes they need to understand where we come from. It's not just about being, you know, I don't know the right way to say it. I think for an adult to understand, it also opens doors and also helps correct some of the false thinking that we've developed over the years when people tell us that we can't do something, or the famous saying that sometimes my mother used to tell me is, Black people don't do that. And I remember her clearly saying that when I went whitewater rafting for the first time. And it was a group of people that I was working with, and we got together with other people's families, and we went camping and whitewater rafting in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And when I explained to my mother what I was doing, the first thing out of her mouth was, Black people don't do that. And I was like, Mom, you're the woman who forced me to learn how to ski when I was in grade school, and the opportunity opened itself up in grade school for us to go, even though no one in our neighborhood, no one in our family, at least that I knew of, had ever been skiing, didn't know anything about skiing. So in that instance, Black people didn't do that either, but you chose to give me that experience. And I'm like, so you went from that person to this person? And when I broke it down like that, she said, you may have a point there. And I'm like, we need to open up a world for our children and for ourselves. And we can start this by starting it at home with the books that we have, the books that we're reading, by watching documentaries. We need to be able to inform ourselves, because we know, especially right now, we're not getting that in school. And the children are not getting that in school. And because it's so critical to their development to know who they are, because when they know who they are, they can stand up to bullies in school. When they know who they are, they don't internalize negative comments by teachers and counselors, because they know where their people comes from, what their people have done, whether it's in their family or not. And it also gives them an opportunity to expand their horizons, because even if your family is successful, like say you come from a family of lawyers, but you don't want to be a lawyer and you don't see any way out. But if you can look in history and find someone who has done what you want to do, you can latch on to that and say, hey, it's possible. I'm capable. I just need to put in the work. So we have to give children as well as adults opportunities to learn about these amazing people. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast, is I want to spark curiosity, because these people are not just people to put on a pedestal and or put on a shirt and say, hey, this person did this. They were real people. They had full lives. And I want to encourage you when something really strikes you to go deeper, to learn more about that person, to open up your mind to what's available. And we have a responsibility as adults to push our children, whether they come from us or not, to reach their potential, not what we want them to be, but look at what their gifts are and help them find people who do what they want to do, who are on a similar track. If it's not the exact same thing, give them, for lack of a better word, a carrot, something to chase after and know that it is possible. Because even though we're still experiencing a lot of first for Black women and Black men, we still need to give our children an opportunity to understand that you can get to where you want to get to. It's just going to take some work. And even if it's not the same exact thing that our children want to do, as more things, especially in technology, take off, and so those careers haven't been available until now, even if you just give them something similar to say, hey, this person was the first and they had to do this kind of work to get to that point. So it encourages them that anything is possible when you're willing to learn and do the work and understand that I just have to take it step by step. That it's not going to be easy. This person had troubles and trials, had people doubting them, sometimes even family doubting them, but they persevered and they were able to overcome and conquer. But things like this don't happen unless we open up the world to our children and help them become independent, to help them to become, like I said previously, critical thinkers. Even when they don't quite understand it, they might come back to it later when they have a better understanding, but because they were exposed, they even know to come back and look for that. For an example, when I was in, I think, kindergarten around that time, my mom made me watch Barbara Jordan's speech at the Democratic National Convention because she wanted me to see a powerful Black woman speak to the nation. And her thing was, that could be you. And that was one of her idiosyncrasies because when I was growing up, my mother didn't allow me to really use slang. I didn't use a lot of even conjunctions. She wasn't a fan of ain't and don't, those kinds of things. She wanted me to speak clearly, use my wider vocabulary because I got teased a lot for sounding quote unquote white. But that's the way she raised me. And she wanted me to see when you speak clearly, when you have purpose and power, you can speak to the nations. Now, I didn't understand that as a kindergartner, but I was fascinated by seeing this Black woman speak with power. And so as I got older, it made me go back and learn more about Barbara Jordan and appreciate everything she was able to accomplish, which I think is a gift we need to give to all of our children. So let's look at this quote one more time. We desire to bequeath two things to our children. The first one is roots. The other one is wings. So I just think that that is so important that you balance it out to let them know where they come from, what they can do, what can be accomplished, but also giving them the freedom and permission to go out and do it, to not dictate their lives to them, to not treat them like they're a mini you, but treat them like they're a unique them, to open up that world for them to explore, to learn, to grow. And even if they just want to be something as simple as a plumber or an electrician, help them learn the business side, that it's not just doing the work that you have to run a business, and show them that a lot of millionaires really, they do simple things like electrician, being plumbers, and show them that on the same token, yes, you can be a lawyer, you can be a judge, you can be a doctor. We have people who span the gamut of being all of those things. You are not relegated to the place that you were born. You are more than that. Whether where you were born was a mansion or where you were born was a shotgun shack. Like I said previously, I believe on another podcast, there is a hole in this world that's your size. And if you don't do what you were born to do, the world will be lesser for it. And there will be people who needed that blessing of your presence that will be lacking because you didn't do it. Or as a parent, you didn't encourage your child to do what they were born and gifted to do. So let's look at our little challenge for this week, or I shouldn't say little, but our challenge this week. If you could give a child one wing to help them soar, what would it be and why? If you could give a child one wing to help them soar, what would it be and why? Please comment on that below in the video. For me, I try to tell every child that I come in contact with, focus on where you want to go, and the steps to get there will take care of themselves. If you keep your mind focused on where you're going, what you need to do will automatically come to you. And I believe that is true because if I'm focusing sometimes just on the next step and the next step looks hard, I forget why I need to take that step. But if I'm focusing on where I want to go, I automatically take the steps that I need to take to get there. So share below so that we can all grow and learn, because there are other things that we don't know that we can absorb and reinvent and use that in our lives now, because we want our children to have a cultural foundation from which to launch and fly and be free. We don't want them to end up like when I originally went to Michigan State my first year, and then I transferred to University of Florida. Go Gators. I met people who that was the first time coming to school was their first time leaving the county that they lived in. And I was shocked. So don't limit your children or yourselves. There's a world out there that's waiting for you to do what you're supposed to do, and they're waiting for you to come and visit and learn about what they do. So thank you for listening and or watching. If you received some value from this episode, please share it with 2 people at least. More if you want. For my audio fam, please leave a positive review on your podcast platforms. For the video fam, please like this episode and leave a comment down below. Remember, you are always welcome to pull up a chair. There's always room at the table. The gumbo is hot and made with love. We will see you next week.